Even men at the top of their game find themselves wanting more from life. Whether it's more meaning, unshakable confidence, a bigger impact, more money, deeper love, a hotter sex life, or a powerful legacy. Find out how good your life can be on this episode of Man Alive. Also, as I've supported men in their love and work lives for 15 years now, many men ask for the right words to say to be more successful, attractive, and desirable. But I found it's not so simple as giving scripts or lines because every man is different. So giving words or scripts would be like giving a tall, thin man a shorter, wider man's pants, or vice versa. The words have to make sense for you and your personality, and there's so much happening beneath the surface that people are responding to. If you're interested in how to become a better lover and leader in your own unique way, go to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz, or you can text ALIVE to 44144. It only takes a couple minutes and you'll start to get an idea of how you can be both more respected and desired. After you fill it out, we can schedule a time to review your quiz and talk about your specific challenges and desires. So again, go to either shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text ALIVE to 44144. That's ALIVE to 44144. Enjoy this episode of Man Alive. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Man Alive. I'm excited to talk today about one of my favorite overlaps, the overlap between sales and sex, or you could say what happens in the boardroom and the bedroom. We're going to talk about becoming a master of influence and having persuasion with integrity. And our guest today is Dave Dee. Welcome, Dave. Thank you so much for being here.
Hey, I'm super excited. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, this is going to be fun. I love that you focus on sales and persuasion and influence, and that you used to be a magician. I thought that was a fun fact about you, right? So there's that sense of becoming a master of influence, beyond just the trick of the eye, like at a deeper level. So
sure.
Yes, what do you feel inspired to start with in this arena?
Well, I think that I'd like to start with one of my favorite sayings, and if people aren't taking notes, they should be, because I want to give a ton of value.
Take notes,
I want to give a ton of value here.
Great.
So you talked about influencing with integrity.
Yeah.
And so one of my favorite sayings that the difference between manipulation and persuasion is intent.
Ooh, I like that.
Okay. So what is your intent when you're meeting a woman? Or when you're meeting with a prospect? It's really, I love what you said about the overlap, because there is overlap.
Yeah.
And so if your intent with a prospect is to sell them something that they don't want, that they don't need, that's not going to help them get the result that they desire, well, that's manipulation, and you're a con artist, right?
Yep.
But if your intent is, hey, I can really, truly help this person, I can help them get the outcome that I desire, help them solve a problem, then it's my belief that you actually have a moral obligation to do everything that you can under ethical constraints to make that sale. And when people don't do that, they're doing their prospect a disservice.
Yes. Right. Because you have an answer, you have a solution for them. And
they're talking to you. Now, if you want to take it as far as dating goes, it's the same as a guy who presents himself as something that he's not really himself. Right. Because the woman wants him to be there, or he thinks that the woman wants him to be this way. So he changes who he is. And then eventually over time, obviously he shifts back into his total personality. It's the same thing. Yeah. That's manipulation. Right?
Yeah, a lot of the men I work with have a sense of, I'm supposed to be someone. And really what we ultimately get down to is you get to be the unique and quirky and wacky, whoever you are. And if that doesn't attract someone to you, then it's not going to be a match anyway. Same with sales and whatever product or service you have.
Yeah, it is exactly the same thing. So the idea is authenticity, right? That's what's attractive in marketing, prospects. That's what's to attract authenticity with attracting women, right? Yeah. You're going to attract the people who are going to be attracted to you with your marketing. So when I teach lead generation to people, getting the prospect to raise their hand, and I'll tell you a cool story about that and tying it in with everything we're talking about.
Okay.
When I talk about that, lead generation is supposed to do two things. It's not just supposed to generate as many leads as you possibly can. It's supposed to generate the right leads.
Yes.
And so whether you're advertising on Facebook or you're using email or you're using Instagram, whatever you're doing, it should accomplish two things. One, attract the people who you want to attract. And at the same time, repel the people who are not right for you.
There's so much freedom there that you can actually say, okay, this is meant to repel the people who are not a right fit for me, whether it's, again, business, boardroom, or with women or whoever, you might not be heterosexual.
Yeah, well, whatever it is. I'm just using women, but absolutely it makes no difference. And so here's a story that'll show you, illustrates this like perfectly. It's the perfect tie-in. So I'm Mr. Marketer, Mr. Persuasion, right? So I got a really like a 5-year relationship, and I'm like, well, I want to start dating again. I had no idea what I was doing. And so, I went to bars and stuff like that. And that's just not my scene, right? So I was fishing in the wrong pond, first of all. Okay.
Yep.
So, where you place your lead generation ads make a big difference about the prospects who you're going to attract.
Just like where you put yourself in the world, you attract different people romantically.
That's exactly right. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to do Match.com. So I go on Match.com and I do it just the way everybody else is doing it. And like nothing is happening. I'm like, God, what is wrong here? Right. I don't know who the hot guy is, whoever the hot guy is now.
Whoever, right, George Clooney, but you're an attractive man and you're powerful, like clear, you have a good heart. I mean, obviously.
Okay, but so it wasn't working. I said, well, why don't I take my marketing skills and change it? So let me give you an example. I turned my profile into a lead generation ad.
Oh my God, amazing.
Literally into a lead generation ad, where this is where we get into the persuasion piece of it. What I did is the way I wrote it, I brought in my case, the women who were reading it into my world, into what it'd be like to be on a date with me, on a first date with me, right? And I specifically talked about the type of woman who I was looking for, the type of woman who I was not looking for, and all of this. And so then what happened is literally when I flipped that switch, talking about, really who I was looking for, but also not just talking about me, talking about who I am, how it would benefit
them,
it would benefit them, right? So everyone's always talking about themselves.
Yes.
Right. You can talk about yourselves in your marketing as long as when you're talking about yourself, it's a benefit to your prospect.
Yes.
Right. So it can't just be about me.
Yeah.
And so that's what it was written, but it was written to attract a woman who, for example, was a foodie. Right. So I like these 7-course dinners with wine pairings and stuff like that. I don't like if you're into doing extreme sports and jumping off ledges and that's that's not for me.
Yeah.
Right. And so I wrote all this stuff. So the most amazing thing happens. I started getting all of this response. Now, by the way, it was the same profile pictures. It was the same everything.
Yeah.
And so 2 lessons. One is what we talked about is who are you for? Who are you not for? Right. Then the second thing is by making small changes in your marketing and what you're doing in your business can dramatically change the results. So one of the things that I say to people is that I help them get more clients without spending more money on marketing. Yeah. And the way that you do that is get better at persuasion and
shifting.
Selling.
And you know what? Part of what I love too is there's, like you said, one of your shifts was, it's not just talking about myself. It's actually considering who's the other person over there. What are they looking for, right? Whether you're married or you're dating or this is sales, there's always a consideration of, okay, how together, what's the best fit or what's the highest good for each of us in this situation? And how do I actually paint that picture or draw that out or help someone get in touch with that for themselves?
Yeah. And then it went from, so again, I mean, this may sound weird, but it's true. This is what I did is I created a system, right? And so, so again, the parallels here are just so beautiful between everything that you said. So when a woman would email me, I would have an email that went out, right? So it was a
standard email.
A standard email.
Yeah.
Okay. I had 2 emails. One was if I was interested. Right? Whatever the next step in the process was. And my process was a phone call. But I also had a really nice one if I wasn't interested.
Okay. So you
let her down. So one of the 2 emails would go out. So I systematized this. Just like if you're in business, anyone listening, if you're in business, you've got to have systems, not just pieces of things. Right?
And you didn't tailor it to each unique woman as you sent it, or did you tailor it?
No, I tailored part of it.
Okay.
So there was one piece of
That
it that I would
gives me
tailor. So
relief.
I'd go look at their profile. I would
Yeah.
pick out something that I liked in their profile.
Yeah.
And that would go in there. And then there'd be a phone call.
Yeah.
Right. And so, by the way, this is exactly what lead generation, this is exactly how I sell now when I sell my services to people. Right. So my services are like 25,000 and up.
Yeah.
Right. So this is how I do it. Someone will respond to me. I will send them an email. Right. And they'll have a Zoom conversation. Now, back when I was dating, it was a telephone. There wasn't Zoom, or maybe there was. I wasn't aware of it.
Yeah.
And so it was a telephone conversation. And on that conversation, I would find out more about, quote, my prospect.
Yes.
Right. The woman who I was talking to. And I would let them know a little bit more about me. Right. And from that, I was truly qualifying them.
Which, right. So that's great too, because a lot of men come to it with a sense of, am I good enough for her? Or, right, am I going to be the right one versus, are we a fit? And
that's exactly right. Are we a fit?
Yeah.
And we'll talk about the N word, the neediness word in a little bit. But right. So that's what I was doing. And by the way, there was no manipulation involved in here. It was simply honest, but I knew what I was going to say on that call. So it wasn't like, what are you doing?
That's interesting, right? Because, authenticity can be interpreted in so many ways. So it could be authentic to just get on the phone and sort of be yourself. But if you don't have intention behind what you're doing or saying, then you're not taking the lead. You're not creating something. You're just kind of letting the pieces
and it doesn't work. And well, that's what most people do when they do consultations, right? So I've got a program called Consultations That Close, and it follows a script. And now there's a difference between a canned presentation and a planned presentation.
Oh, I like that.
All right. So I wasn't like, when I was talking to a woman, I didn't have a script I wasn't reading from a script. It wasn't
exact word for word.
So let me tell you what it does. It allows you to be yourself. Because you don't have to be thinking about, and here's the key, I'm getting excited.
Good.
And it allows you, everyone should write this down. This is the key to all relationships. Now, you may disagree with me, but presence. It allows you to be present with your prospect, with your wife, with your client. I mean, because I'm not having to think about what's the next thing I'm going to say. I can really honestly be listening to what she is saying or what my prospect is saying.
That's so much of what I practice with men. I feel, sometimes I talk about it. It's like human practice. We're practicing together. And so we have conversations, and I talk about it as, leapfrogging from topic to topic and just kind of sporadically, jumping around versus actually following something deeper into the root, right? And by listening, like you said, with presence, you don't have to know where you're going next. It arises in the moment. And I think that can be scary for a lot of people who haven't practiced that.
But being present's the key. And someone can really tell when you are listening to them, when you're thinking about how to reply.
What's next? Yes.
Yeah. So late Stephen Covey, who wrote the book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, once wrote about this topic. He basically said that listen with the intent to understand, not with the intent to reply.
Yes. I have the deck, The 7 Habits of the Highly Effective People.
Oh,
that was the one I just looked at recently.
Really? It's because I'm a mind reader and mentalist and that kind of thing. So I sent that to you. But again, now I'm really present. And so then the other thing is knowing what the next step in your process is. So my next step was, if I felt it was mutual that we both felt that it would be a fit, well, the next step was a first date.
Yes.
And so setting that up. So what is the next step in your process? So I work with a lot of financial advisors. And so they're not necessarily closing the sale on their first consultation, right? They're gathering information, then they're setting up, quote, the second date.
Yes.
But they've got to know what that is. So you set up the second date. So then on the first date, there was a system for that as well.
Oh, so this is so interesting. I'm thinking of the parallels between being in a long-term relationship or being married, and how most of the men I talk to and work with don't have conversations about their sex life or their intimacy or what they want in their relationship, affection, connection, all of that. And how it's kind of like jumping into, a second meeting, or, right, it's jumping ahead. You haven't really had that first, what would you call it? Like the consultation, or.
That's exactly right. Or worse, what guys do is that they just think about it in their head.
Right.
and they never verbalize it and they just get angry about it.
Yes.
Right. So but it's your fault. It's the guy's fault, right?
Yeah.
Because you've got to know where you're going and what you want.
And it's got to come out of your mouth, right?
And
you have to know what you want.
But it's got to come out of your mouth with empathy.
Yeah.
It's the same thing when you're talking with a client or a prospect. It's the exact same thing. And so then I had a first date procedure and a second date procedure.
What was the first date procedure?
One of the things that I used to, so I very, very briefly was doing kind of what you were doing. I had a program called Dating After Divorce, but it wasn't for me. It wasn't.
That's funny. That's so interesting because I do a lot of dating after divorce, having been divorced.
Yeah. And so one of the things I would teach guys is not to take a woman to dinner on the first date. Right. So we go for
something
wine.
Shorter or something shorter.
Right. To lead to the second date, yes. Right? And then so on and so forth. And now we can get into some actual techniques if you want, persuasion techniques, but that's the overall concept here is to have a structured system and be truly present. Yeah. Right. Be truly present and be exactly who you are. Be exactly who you are. Yeah. And if it's not a fit, it's not a fit. Because when you're not exactly who you are and you try to overplease, you come across as needy.
Yes. Okay, wait. So I want to talk about neediness and I want to talk about persuasion techniques with integrity. So do you want to go into the neediness piece first? Because it's a word that I often avoid using because people get so triggered. Like we all have needs. I don't think that makes a person that's needy, right?
Needs and neediness are different.
Great.
Okay.
Explain
we all have needs, right? We absolutely all have needs. That's a different thing. And you need to express those needs, right? Yes. But there's a difference. Neediness is, oh my God, I can't, I have to have you like me. I have to, right? And I'm going to do whatever I can possibly do so you like me. Even if it goes against what I truly believe or what I truly want, I'm going to do it. That's neediness.
And sometimes it's so
how
subtle.
Come you didn't text me back right away, right? That kind of stuff. And again, I teach in selling.
Business,
right? So if I doing a consultation with a prospect and you're trying to sell them and they can sense that, man, I really need this sale so I can make them pay the mortgage.
Right.
They're going to run the opposite way. Why? Because it's all about you. You're focusing on you and not on them, on what you need, not on what they need. Yeah. So when you pursue a prospect so hard, right? That repels them. Yeah. And it's the same thing in a relationship, by the way, whether you're married or whether you're dating somebody, any woman. Yeah. Do you like a guy who's needy? I mean, the answer is no.
No, right? But I love the distinction too, because you can have needs and you can communicate about them, right? And you can actually speak to, this is what I'm wanting. This is what would work for me. You know, these are my non-negotiables. And come from a place inside of yourself, right? Like you said, with presence, with clarity, not with, oh my God, I need you. And if I don't, if you don't give this thing to me, I'm not going to be okay.
I'm not going to be whole. Yeah. I'm not going to be okay. Yeah. That's a totally different scenario than saying, hey, here's what I'm looking for. Here's what makes me happy. And sometimes those conversations are difficult. But having those, and again, doesn't matter, we're talking business, bedroom, doesn't make any difference. It is the same thing. Employees, same thing. Having those difficult conversations opens up a lot. My wife and I had a difficult conversation, right? And I was thinking in my head something completely different than the reality of the situation. Huh. Okay. And because we had that difficult conversation and we communicated, right, which is a whole topic there, and because we're constantly communicating everything, it was awesome, right? And so this thing I've been thinking about going over in my head, I'm like, geez, why didn't I just bring this up earlier? Right? Because,
why didn't you?
Fear of rejection, which is a whole other thing. And I wasn't like thinking about it for like massive amount of time, but
we do that, right? We kind of perseverate or spin about certain things.
We spin about certain things and come up with an outcome, which is not the reality.
Some imagined outcome, usually the worst case scenario.
Yeah, exactly. And so, definitely don't be needy. And I call it takeaway selling when I'm talking about selling. So takeaway selling is the opposite of neediness. Right. So when I'm talking to a prospect, I'll actually say to them, I'll say, hey, you know what? Maybe I'm not even sure if I'm the right person for you. But let me ask you some questions and to see if maybe we're a fit. If not, I'll recommend somebody else to you.
Yes.
See, that totally takes them
Takes the
off
pressure
guard
off.
and it relaxes them. Like, geez, I thought this guy was going to try to hard close me here. Right. So if you want to get into some techniques, we can do that because I know we have limited time. We might have to do another one of these. So
yeah, we could do another one. Sure. Yeah. But let's do a couple of the persuasion techniques that you find powerful and with integrity.
Sure. So we'll start. I've got a 4-step process for my consultations that close. And again, this can be applied to anything. So the first phase is called the meet phase. This is when you're meeting with the prospect for the first time.
Oh, meet. I thought I took it as like meat. That you eat.
Isn't it like
the
a
meat
steak?
Of the consultation.
No, meet, MEET, not
Great.
MEAT. Yeah. And so the first thing and the most important thing is to develop rapport with your prospect, right? So the number one rapport developing technique is to really listen, to be present and really listen. Nothing what I'm going to say trumps that. But if you want to get into some actual techniques, one of the techniques that I teach people comes from neuro-linguistic programming or NLP. And it's a strategy called matching and mirroring. So matching and mirroring, which some people probably have heard of, but I'll give you one that I almost guarantee you that no one is using.
Oh, good.
So matching and mirroring is the concept is when people are like each other, they tend to like each other. When they're not like each other, they tend not to like each other. So what you do to develop, people are naturally in rapport. They're doing this. So for example, they're using the same vocal tonality. They're using the same physiology, right? The same speed, right? So the example is, let's say that you're talking to someone who's more of a soft talker.
Right. If I start coming in really hard and really loud.
Right. Because that's my personality.
Yes.
So you're not mimicking them because that's disrespectful. But what you're doing is you're meeting them where they are.
Right.
And so you're going to lower your voice. You're not going to change who you are as a person, right? But you're going to lower because that develops rapport. So again, this is really, really important, especially now when face-to-face meetings aren't happening a lot.
Right.
So that's really important. So matching and mirroring. One of the things that you can match and mirror is common phrases that somebody uses. So if you were to talk to me over a period of time and I think something's really great, I would use the word, I say, God, that was killer. That dinner was killer. That movie was killer. We just killed it, right? That's terminology. So you hear that and you hear me using it. So now you hear me saying that. Yeah. Because many words have like a phrase, have emotional impact, create emotion inside somebody. So now if I'm going to present my solution to you, I would say, I'm going to show you something. I think you're going to really think this is killer.
That's so interesting though, because as I think of saying killer, I feel so weird. It's like, it's so not something that I've ever said. So if I say, oh, I think you're going to think it's killer, is that inauthentic?
Why?
I don't know. Because it's me trying to match you versus me bringing what's there for me.
Yeah. So again, I mean, all of this stuff, you got to decide what works for you. And if you're uncomfortable with it, you don't do it. See, I don't have a problem with that because my goal is, again, the intent is not to sell them on the thing that they don't want. I just had a client today.
Yeah. Okay. That's great. Today. Going back to the intent.
Yes. Yeah. I just had a prospect today and I said, I said, you don't need to hire me. I said, you don't need to pay me. You got everything lined up. It's all good. Right. So, and I did all of this stuff. And at the end, I said, you don't need me. Right. So again, but it's up to everybody to do
So if you feel really uncomfortable with something and you try and do it anyway, that would feel strange.
Absolutely. You don't do it. So I'm just giving you different strategies.
Examples. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So we develop rapport. That's the first phase during this phase. Then the next thing that we want to do is we want to discover exactly what our prospect wants.
Nice.
Exactly what's most important to them. And this is where we really listen and we go deep. All right. Now, by the way, you can use this. So you can do this with your wife.
I was just thinking the parallels are amazing, right? To do this in relationship and dating.
So here's how this goes, right? So let me ask you this. Tell me, what's most important to you about your podcast?
I think what's most important is that men have a place to go to get the whole range of support, all the way from sex to business to health to death and legacy and all of that, right? That there's no barrier to get that information or the new perspectives to help them grow.
So why is that really important to you? I hear you. Why is that really important to you?
Oh, well, it's important because having worked with men for the past 20 years, I know that there's a lot of loneliness and isolation and a hard time asking for help. And so to bring this out more into the open feels like men are less isolated. There's more chance of overcoming depression or anxiety or even suicidality, right? There's like a window into what's possible for them.
So if I hear you correctly, what you're saying is you really want to help men on a deep level with all aspects of their life. Is that right?
Yeah.
But tell me, why is that important to you? Why?
Well, I feel that if we had men in the world who were healthier and happier and better understood and more connected, we would have a more peaceful world. That's a little more of the global piece.
But what about for you?
But for me, well, I have a father who seemed like he kind of became a ghost of himself. Or, my mom is a very strong woman, and I saw him trying to get it right and the pain of that. And then I was given an opportunity to work with men 20 years ago and just felt the depth of the longing and the pain and the fear and the frustration and the feeling like there's nowhere to go with all of this. It just broke my heart.
Okay. So we just did it, right? So, and you do this with anybody.
Yeah.
Right. But that was beautiful, by the way. Thank you for sharing that and opening up like that much.
Yeah. Thank you for asking.
And that's the second part of the process, because now I truly know what you want.
Yeah. And why?
And why you want it.
Yeah.
Right. And so the technique, okay, and for people listening,
right. The air quotes.
The air quotes. The technique is not really a technique. It's really caring about finding out what the person's want. So if you look at when we started, you're like, yeah, I want to help men and and then we got down to your dad.
Right.
Right. So what happens is it does a number of things. One, I can come up with a solution. Like my immediate solution would be, my God, we got to put together a really big course and sell it via a webinar and really get it out here beyond your podcast.
Yeah.
Right. If you were coming to me for a consultation, right? So, and now I actually have your entire core story, but now I know the real motivation and the real emotional reasons why you're doing it. So with financial advisors, the person will say, well, so I have enough money for retirement.
Right.
Well,
First layer.
Why is that important?
Why is that important?
Yeah.
Yes.
And where you can stop is when you get that real emotional connection, because now I can actually design something. I can make one of two decisions. One, I can help you achieve that goal, or two, I can't.
And if you can't, then you have other resources or recommend someone else, right? Or you let that person go.
Yeah. Let me recommend somebody who would be far better.
Which is so generous.
Yeah. So if someone comes to me and for example, we find out that their major need is that they need to generate leads on Facebook. That's not me. That's not what I do. Right.
Yep.
And so I can get them to somebody who is. So if you take this in the dating example, no, you don't have to ask those questions the exact same way. But if you find out that the person who you're with wants 10 kids and you don't want 10 kids,
right?
That is totally cool, right? And you can find her somebody who wants 10 kids, right? So again, it's one of my strongest strategies, because now first of all, it develops a tremendous amount of rapport, tremendous amount of trust. And everyone should listen to it again, because if you notice, I fed back kind of what you said.
Right. You matched, you mirrored, you repeated some of the things that I said at the end.
Yeah. Some of the things that you said. And then I would say, okay, so let's summarize this. Okay. Let's talk about now how you can achieve this on a bigger level.
Yeah.
All right. And now I can lay out my plan.
Is that the third phase?
The third phase is prescribe. So the first phase is meet, MEET. Okay. The second phase is the discovery phase. The next phase is the prescription. Right. So here's how you prescribe the solution is really important.
Okay.
So you only want to talk in terms of, well, first of all, you want to make sure that you actually have the solution, right? The outcome. Right. So, and if you don't, you can say that. So if you're doing this with your wife, and I don't think we can actually hit that.
Yeah.
Like exactly. But how about, would this be okay if we did this? Right.
Right. Or if you're not in the selling position or a business where you're supposed to be the one with the answer. You can be a lot more collaborative.
But you can still find out what they want. Now let's figure out how, by the way, all my closes are collaborative, even in business.
Great.
So now I go into the prescription phase, but I only prescribe my solution. Here's the key. In terms of only in terms of what the prospect has said is important.
Great. So it's not all the other pieces of what you do.
Right. So I would not necessarily say to you, and I would with other prospects, right? I wouldn't necessarily, because you didn't mention one thing about money. That is, now I'm sure you want to make money doing all this. Some people I talk to, I want to make $1 million. Well, why do you want to make $1 million? What's important to you about that, right? We went down a completely different path. And so I wouldn't say to you, well, here's this plan that's going to make you so much money. You're going to make so much money, it's going to blow your mind.
Right.
Like, I can just see you right now. You just tightened up, by the way.
I did.
Okay. You just did, right? Because that's not you. But if I said, okay, let me show you this plan, how we can reach more men.
Yeah.
Let's develop a plan, how we can reach more men so you can really impact men across the globe on a deeper level and actually start a movement. Would that sound great?
Sounds thrilling.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Because that's what you want.
Right.
Right. And so now I prescribe that plan. Now we don't have time here, but there's 4 different personality types as well. So as you're describing your plan, it's really important that you describe it based upon their personality type. Okay. Right. So there's Mr. Boss or Ms. Boss. Right. There's Mr. Go along with the crowd or Ms. Go along with the crowd. There's different personality types, and they're very easy to recognize. Like, I talked to a woman today who ran she's a new client of mine. She was CEO of $1 billion company.
She's the boss.
She's the boss.
And she wants to be spoken to as the boss.
Right. She wanted, she's laying F-bombs during our conversation. Right. And she wants, so if I talk, hey, this is going to be a lot of fun. No. Step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4.
Yep.
Right. Then you have Ms. Analytical. Ms. Analytical this woman does not want the nitty gritty details. She's going to be like bored. No. I don't, she literally said, do you have people that can do that for me?
She wants more like the results and the.
Right. Yes. And so how you present it depends upon the personality type. Great. And then just to close this up, I'll tell you my number 1 close. So everyone should come and close, right? This is my number 1 close. Okay. Take notes on this one. This is really hard. Really hard. Okay. Ready?
This is funny. So I can tell. I can tell something's coming.
Because, in selling 101 books, there's a bazillion closes that you memorize word for word. And you're kind of crushing the prospect. You're kind of arm twisting.
Jabbing it in
there, right? Here's my big close. So what do you think? By the way, that goes against every sales
training I've ever done. Yes.
There is. And by the way, and they're right if you don't do all of the other phases. Right. But if I've developed rapport with you. If you
have the rapport, if there's trust, if there's
trust, I have found out exactly what you want. I have created a plan that shows you exactly how to get what you want.
Yep.
You know that I'm an expert and an authority. And I've presented the plan based upon your personality type so you understand it.
Yes.
But I'll tell you what happens most of the time. What happens most of the time is the prospect says, how do we get started? I don't even close.
Right.
I literally don't close. They'll say, how do I get started? And if they don't, I'll say, so what do you think? And you let them talk. Now, there's a whole thing about answering objections, but we can do on another one.
Right. We can do that on another one. But yeah, that's great. Right. So and what I love about that is it becomes effortless. I've been writing a lot about effortless attraction or effortless sales, right? That way where once you're connected on a deep level, once you have that rapport and the trust and the sense of alignment, right? What else is there to do but say yes to each other in some way? Say yes or say no. And no is fine right.
too.
Right. If it's not a fit, then
if it's not a fit, right? And but again, it's such a really, really nice way of doing things, and you'll make more money. So I had an attorney, and these guys, they hate selling. They just don't like selling. They like doing the work. And they love helping people.
They just don't want to do the sales.
Right. And he says, you know what? I'm going to do this. I'm going to learn this. And for the first time ever, he closed 28 prospects in a row, and he couldn't believe it. And he said, most of them said, yeah, let's just get started with it.
Amazing.
Again, so they're techniques, but they're really finding out what somebody really wants on a deep emotional level.
Yeah, that's not
I don't think that, I can't think of that being as manipulative. I personally don't. Again, unless I don't have the solution, because this is where the integrity piece comes in.
Yep.
Because what will happen is people will become attached to you. All right. And you have to have the integrity, if you really can help them,
to actually say no,
to tell them, because it's very, very powerful. I had the final story, because I know we're probably going over here.
Yeah.
The final story is, there was a woman who wanted to work with me. And so again, I make them I call jumping through hoops to actually, before they can have a conversation with me.
Yeah.
And so by the time they're having a conversation with me, they're pretty
serious.
sold. Yeah. They're pretty sold. Right. And so she said, and this is $25,000. And I just didn't think her project was going to work. I mean, it just was not a good project.
Yeah.
Now, I didn't tell her. I just said, I don't think I'm the right person. You know what? I don't think I'm the right person to help you. And she says to me, no, you don't understand. I have the money. And I said, no, I do understand that. I just said, I think there might be somebody better to help you. This is just really not my area. No, I want to work with you. I've got the money. Where do I send the money?
Interesting.
Right. And I'm not doing takeaway selling. I'm literally telling her no. And so we ended and then she sent me a mean email. Right. Now that doesn't usually happen, but you just have to understand that if you do this and you do it right, you are very powerful.
Yeah. I love that. I often say to my men, I'm like, I'm going to teach you, you're going to have superpowers, but you have to promise to use them for good, because otherwise, right, you can manipulate with this.
And that sucks. And there's no reason to do it.
That sucks. Yeah.
And
thank you so much. This is so powerful and playful all at the same time. And
that was fun. I had a great time.
Good. Yeah, I appreciate the depth of where you're coming from, and the integrity, right? That we can actually talk about selling and mastering influence in a way that's good for everybody.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I had a great time.
Thank you. I'm so glad you joined us for today's episode of Man Alive. I hope you enjoyed our conversation and it gave you something to consider and explore in your life. If you like what you heard, I'd be so grateful for you to subscribe and write a quick review that helps men like you find us. And again, head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz or text the word ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 to get a sense of how you can become a better lover and leader. You'll start to see how you can be both more respected and desired in your unique and genuine way. If you don't feel as confident or as excited about life or love as you'd like to be, this quiz is a really great starting point and will guide you toward a more passionate love life and a more inspiring and successful career. So again, text ALIVE, ALIVE, to 44144 or head over to shanajamescoaching.com/quiz. Join us each week for a new episode of Man Alive.